Tang Wei appeared to have everything an aspiring actress could hope for. Born in 1979 and raised in China, she developed an early interest in the arts and eventually studied at the Central Academy of Drama in Beijing. Like many young performers, she faced auditions, smaller opportunities, and the uncertainty that comes with trying to establish a name in a competitive industry. But her career changed dramatically when she landed a role that would make her internationally recognized. In 2007, Tang Wei was cast by acclaimed director Ang Lee in Lust, Caution, a period espionage drama set in Japanese-occupied Shanghai during World War II. She portrayed Wang Jiazi, a young woman recruited into a dangerous plan involving seduction, deception, and assassination. The role required far more than conventional acting. Her character had to move between emotional vulnerability and calculated determination, while gradually becoming trapped inside the very relationship she was supposed to manipulate. Tang Wei's performance attracted immediate attention. She brought a complicated mixture of fear, desire, loyalty, and internal conflict to the character. The film itself was visually ambitious and emotionally intense, but the intimate scenes between Tang Wei and her co-star became one of its most controversial elements. They were not presented simply for shock value. Within the story, they were connected to the character's shifting power, trust, betrayal, and emotional dependence. Even so, the explicit nature of the material generated strong reactions. Internationally, the film received major critical recognition, and Tang Wei was suddenly being discussed as one of China's most promising new performers. Lust, Caution won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, giving the young actress an extraordinary platform. For a moment, everything suggested that she was on the verge of becoming a major international star. But success abroad came with a very different consequence at home. The controversy surrounding the film became increasingly difficult to separate from Tang Wei herself. In mainland China, the movie faced censorship, while Tang Wei became the target of intense scrutiny. Her participation in the film was viewed by some authorities and conservative audiences as crossing acceptable cultural boundaries. Reports of an unofficial industry ban followed, and the consequences were severe. Advertising work connected to her was reportedly removed, and her public appearances became much less frequent. The momentum created by her breakthrough role seemed to disappear almost overnight. The irony was difficult to ignore. Tang Wei had been praised internationally for taking on a demanding and fearless role, yet that same performance had become the reason her career home was suddenly in danger. Her situation demonstrated how differently artistic risk could be interpreted depending on the environment. In one part of the world, her performance represented courage and sophisticated acting. In another, the same work became associated with controversy and moral concerns. For Tang Wei, the damage was not limited to losing immediate opportunities. Her identity as an actress began to be overshadowed by the controversy surrounding one film. Instead of being discussed primarily for her talent, she was increasingly associated with the backlash. Yet this was only the beginning of the story. Tang Wei's career had been interrupted, but her ambition had not disappeared. And while opportunities in China had become difficult, another possibility was beginning to emerge. An international career beyond the borders of the industry that had suddenly turned against her. Tang Wei's international recognition should have opened doors. Her performance in Lust, Caution had attracted attention from critics and industry professionals outside China, and her screen presence made her an obvious candidate for international projects. For a brief period, there appeared to be a possibility that the controversy surrounding her in China could become the beginning of a new chapter abroad. Meetings took place. Scripts reportedly came her way. The idea of Tang Wei becoming a crossover actress seemed realistic. She had the talent, the international recognition, and the kind of sophisticated performance that could attract filmmakers looking for fresh talent. But the expected breakthrough never fully materialized. The obstacle was not simply language or a cultural difference. There was a much larger business reality developing in the background. China's film market had become increasingly important to international studios, and access to Chinese audiences represented enormous financial potential. Hollywood productions were paying greater attention to what could succeed in China, and studios had strong reasons to avoid decisions that might create problems with Chinese authorities or audiences. Tang Wei's association with lust, caution therefore created a complicated situation. She was not officially banned by Hollywood. There was no universal declaration preventing American filmmakers from hiring her. Instead, the problem was more subtle. Her previous controversy could create uncertainty for projects that depended on access to the Chinese market. If a studio believed that casting her could create difficulties, avoiding that risk could seem like the safer business decision. As a result, opportunities that appear promising sometimes fail to move forward. Explanations could be ordinary, scheduling conflicts, creative changes, or competing projects, but repeated disappointments created a pattern that was difficult to overlook. There was another challenge as well. International filmmaking has often struggled with simplistic ideas about Asian performers. Instead of offering roles that allowed an actress to demonstrate emotional complexity, some opportunities could reduce Asian characters to narrow stereotypes. Tang Wei had already shown in Lust caution that she could carry an emotionally demanding story. Being offered one-dimensional roles would naturally feel like a step backward. The situation placed her in an unusual position. The performance that made international filmmakers notice her was also connected to the controversy that made some of them cautious. Meanwhile, Hollywood's relationship with the Chinese market continued to influence creative and commercial decisions. Scripts could be modified, scenes could be removed, and casting choices could be examined to the question of international marketability. For studios balancing enormous budgets, artistic considerations were often competing with financial calculations. Tang Wei was caught in the middle of that tension. The most frustrating part was that there was no single door she could point to and say had been closed. Instead, opportunities seemed to disappear quietly. There were no dramatic announcements, no obvious rejection, and often no clear explanation. She was simply left watching possibilities fade before becoming reality. Eventually, Tang Wei had to reconsider where she wanted to build her career. Rather than continuing to chase an uncertain path toward Hollywood, she began looking toward Chinese-language cinema again. It was not necessarily the glamorous international comeback that might once have been imagined, but offered something more important. The chance to work consistently and prove that one controversial role could not define her entire career. Her next chapter will become less about Hollywood's approval and more about rebuilding her reputation on her own terms. Returning to Chinese-language cinema was not an easy decision for Tang Wei. Her reputation had been damaged, and the controversy surrounding Lust, caution remained part of the public conversation. But instead of allowing that controversy to become the final chapter of her career, she began rebuilding step by step. One of the most important moments in that process came in 2013, when she starred in Finding Mr. Right. The romantic comedy became a major commercial success in China and introduced audiences to a different side of the actress. Rather than being defined by the provocative material that had surrounded her earlier career, Tang Wei was able to demonstrate warmth, humor, vulnerability, and emotional range. The success mattered because it proved something fundamental. Audiences were still willing to embrace her. Her comeback was not simply about box office numbers. Tang Wei continued seeking roles that allowed her to demonstrate the depth of her craft. Projects such as The Golden Era gave her opportunities to explore more demanding characters and reinforce her reputation as a serious performer. The years following her controversy gradually changed the narrative around her. The actress who had once been defined by a scandal was increasingly being recognized for persistence and artistic ability. At the same time, the international entertainment landscape was changing. Global audiences were becoming more interested in stories from different countries, while international collaborations and streaming platforms created new pathways for performers who did not necessarily fit the traditional Hollywood model. For Tang Wei, this shift offered an important lesson. International recognition did not have to mean becoming a conventional Hollywood star. An actor could build a meaningful career across multiple industries without depending entirely on the approval of one particular film market. That perspective appeared to become increasingly important in her career. Instead of chasing fame for its own sake, she could choose projects based on her creative value and the opportunities they provided as an actress. Her journey also exposed a larger contradiction within the entertainment business. Hollywood had once shown interest in her talent, yet the industry's commercial relationship with China could make that interest more complicated. The story was therefore bigger than one actress. It revealed how politics, censorship, economics, and artistic freedom can intersect in unexpected ways. Tang Wei's career was never simply a story about an actress being rejected by Hollywood. It was a story about how quickly circumstances can change when art crosses cultural and political boundaries. The controversy surrounding Lust, caution could have ended her career. Instead, it became one of the most difficult chapters in a much longer journey. She lost opportunities. She faced public scrutiny. She watched international possibilities disappear. But she continued working, and over time, her accomplishments became more important than the controversy that once surrounded her. Today, the most meaningful part of Tang Wei's story is not whether Hollywood eventually gave her the level of recognition some once expected. It is the fact that she continued building a career without allowing one role to become the definition of her identity. Her experience is a reminder that an artist's career can take unexpected turns. A breakthrough can become a setback. A controversy can become a turning point. And rejection from one industry does not necessarily mean the end of an artist's story. Tang Wei's journey ultimately became a story of reinvention. She did not erase the difficult chapter of her past. Instead, she continued forward and allowed her later work to speak for itself. What once looked like the collapse of a promising career became something very different. A testament to persistence, artistic ambition, and the ability to rebuild after circumstances seemed to have taken everything away. Her story shows that sometimes the strongest comeback is not about returning to where you started. It is about creating an entirely new path forward.